On the latest between the U.S. and India, we are joined by Michael Hanlon from the Brookings Institution, Mr. Guo Shetang from the Shanghai University of International Business and Economics, and Bobby Nathary, a journalist and political commentator. Mr. O'Hanlon, how significant to the U.S. side about this latest pact between U.S. and India?
It's a modest step, but it comes on top of a number of other modest steps in the U.S.-India relationship over the last 20 years, starting really with President Clinton, that continued to strengthen what many people think was an overdue strong partnership between the world's oldest democracy and the world's most populous democracy. In some ways, the distance between India and the United States during the Cold War was unnatural. And in some ways, what we're seeing is a convergence towards what many would have expected. Obviously, this is partly accelerated by both countries' concerns about China's rise. It's also accelerated by the Trump administration's desire to have a few notable accomplishments right before Election Day. But in the grand scheme of things, I would say that it's important, but it's not radical. It's not transformative. And therefore, I think everyone can view this with some degree of calm, that it is a closening of the relationship between India and the United States, but it's not an alliance. It's not headed for an alliance, and I don't think it's a major geostrategic change.
Mr. O'Hanlon, some have also indicated about the apparent relatively cautious attitude from New Delhi when approaching the United States, particularly at the end of this administration.
Yeah, well, I think in historic terms, New Delhi takes its own independence and sovereignty very seriously, as you know. And India has never wanted to be in alliance with major Western powers. That was probably most clear in regard to its former colonial power, Great Britain. But even the United States and other Western countries are important friends that India still prefers to keep a certain distance from. India is a very interesting country, I think we all know. It's trying to establish its own role in the international order, and so it's not interested in sort of joining up to a U.S.-led alliance system. I don't really think that's where India wants to go. But as India has more concerns about China's rise, it will want to strengthen the partnership. So I see this as step-by-step, incremental tightening of a relationship that is important, but not headed for military alliance.
Professor Guo, what do you make of what Mr. O'Hanlon suggests as incremental step-by-step approaches between the two sides? How is China looking at the latest picture?
I agree with Michael O'Hanlon. He's very, I think I agree with him because if you look at the whole the process of Indian U.S. military relationship, it always depends on the outside exchange, outside situation, particularly from China, from outside of the Indian Ocean. And we didn't see how much the bilateral relationship between the two sides has accelerated in the last more than 1 decade or 2 decades now. So just in recent years, the agreements, signed, particularly this agreement, that makes a very big voice because people regard this one step for Indian governments that to counterbalance Chinese rise there in Indian Ocean or even in South Asia. So that is why I think that is just a temporary impression that gives us that although this India's U.S. is getting to further military cooperation to military alliance, it's not really true, because China is not really a threat to India. It's just a border disputes. So it's kind of a strategic step for both sides to move together, and not a military alliance. So I totally agree with you.
Okay, Mr. Guo, we have seen China and India having some relatively interesting, to say the least, interactions over the past few months regarding its border. And of course, the latest incident is there was a Chinese missing person in the region And now he's been returned to China by the Indian side. There were also military-to-military meetings between the two sides as well over the past few months following the disputes. So how do you see China and India cautiously trying to mend the fences right now as the winter approaches, which is almost impossible for anyone to operate over there in the disputed area? And also, how do you see this critical juncture when the U.S. election is just a week away, and different parties certainly try to make certain statements during this 1 week time?
Yes, it's a very interesting moment because just 1 week before the U.S. presidential election, the 2+2 military meeting in New Delhi is just requested by Washington. It's just people regard this meeting for the presidential election in USA, not for really for the improvements of the bilateral relations. So it's temporary more gesture for Washington, D.C. itself. But for India, it's also they want more balancing power from outside to balance China. So it's a very interesting time to look at the China-India relationship now.
Yeah.
If you look at the China-Indian relationship, particularly after the June 15 coalition there are much more now, by the two governments and military now to handle these stalemates very well. From my point of view, it's very well because they don't want to keep this stalemate to be escalated to military conflicts more. So I think now it's just they're talking to the first priority is to disengage of the military troops there, and both sides now is trying to do that. So I think that the intention of both sides is very clear. They want to do that. They want to get in together.
Tell me more about India's decision to have this 2+2 dialogue with the U.S. and about the decision-making process, if you can, Mr. Nadari.
What we have seen so far is that the two sides have decided to come up with a new security agreement or military agreement under which they are going to develop and share sensitive satellite data with regard to helping to improve the accuracy of the Indian missile system, defense missile systems, different types of those military hard gear. That's all really. But if you're asking me, I think India had much better option of talking directly to China in order to understand China's position with regard to India in the Indo-Pacific Ocean and the surrounding area, and at the same time to just see how China is treating or plans to treat India, and not listen to the political rhetoric of people like Mike Pompeo, Esper, and many others who are just there to stir waters, who are just there to sell American military hardware and equipment, and who are just there, as they stated, to contain China in this strategic region. We know that they have signed the deal and they are very happy about that, but I don't think there are any fireworks for New Delhi to celebrate. Why? Because we have seen far and much more important, significant and strategic agreements like these in the past, from which the United States walked out so easily and so carelessly. I'm talking about many different international treaties, like the Iran nuclear deal, like the Paris climate accord, like many other treaties, strategic treaties that Trump walked out without giving any consideration to the official position of the European Union and other Western partners. So at the end of the day, this is not a significant military agreement or strategic partnership between India and America. This is not. India is not going to be treated, in an exceptional way, and who knows when Trump or the next administration might decide again to walk out of this military partnership too. Why? Because they have done that before, and they are going to easily do it again.
Mr. O'Hanlon, now both India and the United States are in the middle of the struggle against COVID-19, arguably the rest of the world as well. However, the two countries certainly leading the list of those that have been infected and also the death toll as well. So how much of a crisis of public health and as a result on the economy could bring the two closer, at least temporarily? How much danger is there, do you think, in terms of miscalculation and misjudgment on policymakers' sides?
I will address the COVID question in just a second, but first in response to Mr. Naderi and his eloquent comments, I share his concern that the Trump administration in particular has not been consistent in honoring America's obligations, which is part of why I hope it will be defeated next week in our ballot. I think that when we look at the grand historical sweep, there are a lot of reasons when Indians and Americans look at each other. They may not want to form a completely tight alliance, but they do see a basis for cooperation, and they see a basis for more friendship than we've had historically. The distance between the two countries historically has been somewhat unnatural. And so I do believe that even though both sides will perhaps keep their distance, and I respect Mr. Naderi's reasons for wanting to keep his distance and India's distance from the United States, that this overall trend towards greater collaboration has been going on for 20 years, since Clinton. It's been Clinton, Bush, Obama, Trump, and there's a reason why it has continued with Democrats and Republicans. There is sort of a natural convergence of at least some interests. But yes, I agree. If India and China can defuse the border problem on their own, that's much better. And I don't think the United States has any particular advantage in helping with that problem. On COVID, I think we're all in this together. And one of the regrettable things of 2020 is the degree to which there has been so much animosity, especially between the United States and China, over how to deal with this catastrophe. But China handled the virus better and more effectively than much of the rest of the world. And so we all have things to learn from each other. And I think that if we do have a Biden administration, you will have a sense that there's a need for collaboration in the first instance on addressing the pandemic rather than blamesmanship and criticism.
Mr. Guo, Professor, tell me more about what Mr. O'Hanlon earlier mentioned, that this is a systemic approach from the U.S., getting ever closer to New Delhi through several presidencies. And how does China see that process? And what's likely that China needs to be prepared in terms of how Washington will tangle with New Delhi, even with the new administration?
If you look at the whole international politics, particularly the transformation of geopolitics, the U.S. and India relationships getting closer is no doubt. So because of China's rise, so it's the international relations, a great power relations transformation is inevitable. So this is natural. So when we look at the U.S. policy toward India, it will continuation of the, I think if Biden wins the presidential election, I think he will do something, continuation of Trump. Just look at the Indian side. I always say that India is an independent country. It has an independent foreign policy. He can do whatever he wants. So the improvements between the Indian relationship militarily, particularly with the USA, is what he wants to do. This is just more concern of China's rights there. So the problem is how China reacts, how China think about this. Until now, from my observation, and China, to my judgment, I think China still just deepen Chinese distrust of Indian strategic objectives. Is the India want to be an enemy of China or just wants a partner with China? So until now, I think it is just for Indian side to handle this issue very carefully, not only the border issue, but also the U.S.-India military relations. So India now is skeptical to the American intentions there. They know very clearly that the Indian U.S. side want to separate China's India to be an enemy. For the Modi government now, it's handled as more concern about the internal economic and social stabilities there, and military alliance just kind of signature to China that they are because of the back of these actions behind that is nationalism there.
Finally, before we go, we want you to give us some insights about what would be the best and the smartest strategic choice from all sides regarding their relationship with one another, particularly U.S.-India and China-India? Mr. O'Hanlon.
We should stay calm. We're having historic developments. China and India are both doing amazing things, and sometimes they're doing them well, and sometimes China in particular is flexing its muscle more than we prefer in Washington. But I actually think that if we stay calm and look for ways to collaborate, we can work through this tough period.
Keep calm. Mr. Guo.
Yes, for both, I think for China and India particularly, just to think about the strategic intentions, strategic objectives of both sides. Both of China and India want economic growth, want economic cooperation there, want the stability in South Asia. And so what for both sides, Delhi and Beijing, to think about this.
Okay.
So in USA, I think it's time. Yes, it takes time to look at that.
Mr. Nadri, final words, briefly.
Well, communication. It's the only way to build bridges. Remember, this is not just about India, China, and the United States economies. It's also about the global economy. Whatever they decide to do from now on is going to affect positively or negatively the international community and the well-being of the global economy.
Okay.
So let's cross our fingers and realize that there are still cooler heads everywhere in order to bring this situation down and come to some kind of understanding that whatever they do is only for the benefit of humanity.
Michael O'Hanlon, Guo Shetang, Bobby Naderi, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.